I don't think I had unclicked the microphone on my side on the river thing.
Unclicked it.
Yeah,
Technical
so
term.
when you, huh? No, but when you come in and then you select your like whichever microphone it is.
Yeah, it did sound like you were coming through the laptop somehow, but
Oh,
something
no, I
was.
was coming through the laptop because for some I couldn't get that thing to work. But anyway, it works beautifully
Yeah,
now.
it's working
So
really well
Sounds
now. This is
fabulous.
this is the
I
best
didn't
best voice
change
we've ever
anything.
had. Really?
I'm
Yeah.
going to have to
Don't
up
you
my
love
microphone
technology?
game this next week.
Oh, I've had to. I've had to resort to the old £8.99 Turtle Beach headset. So you guys are all out shining me
I think of 5,000 quid ribbon microphone.
to send over VoIP. Beautiful.
Yes. Am I a tad quiet? Okay. Oh no, I'm up at maximum
No,
volumes here,
perfect.
according to
Yeah,
Cole.
I
He
think
thinks I'm a
everything
bit
is.
quiet.
I wonder if Highland Spring would sponsor us.
I was just saying, I think I am allowed to have a drink in this meeting room, but I'm not allowed to carry drinks through the library, so I can't buy one in the cafe and then bring it here. So I think I would need to bring it in a sealed bottle.
Ah.
Yeah, this, the bureaucracy of libraries is a whole thing.
No, Paul,
Oh
it's actually
man.
Sennheiser, not Thunderbird. Darian is in the library in University of Cambridge.
Correct. I still don't have broadband at home, and there is really no telling when I will, because it's all dependent on the goodwill of the roadworks people who need to come and lay the fibre. Need to literally physically dig up the road and bring fibre to us, and they've said they're very happy to do it, and they'll let us know when they have a window, and it could be any time between last December and June. So we're just getting by. It's all right. I quite
Am
like.
I still quiet for you, Darian and
No, you
Rose?
sound fine to me.
Okay, because
I feel like we have a decent balance.
okay, David on Thingamajig is saying I'm a bit quiet.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
maybe you're.
I'm at maximum voluminous here, so I don't know what else I can do. Yeah, Jeff Campbell's saying still a bit quiet.
Yeah, you could physically.
Oh, hold on. Can I twaggle this in my audio settings here? That will be fun, wouldn't it?
Do you have a twaggler?
Um,
That sounds like a dot matrix printer.
That's the printer that I wanted
Oh,
to do
that's your
the hot
inkjet.
hardware
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
But
okay,
I got,
is that better?
Yes, that's maybe too loud now.
Ah,
but
okay.
that's
In that
good.
case, I can twaggle that down. What sayest thou on? Oh, okay. Cole says much better. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll take it down a nth. That being a technical term.
1/nth.
Okay,
Yes.
so we should now be reasonably balanced.
As well balanced as the team ever is.
Right. So if Tim's dad thinks that'll be fine.
Well, if a Danton is happy with it, then
We've got some notes on this, haven't we? Somewhere. Where am I looking for here? Bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Note from John to John: don't close the window with all the tabs open.
I have closed all my tabs because I forgot to bring my power supply. I'm very glad I use a MacBook because I've been here for a
Oh,
couple
you'll
of
be
hours.
fine till the middle of next week.
I will, yeah. Well, actually, this is an original 2020.
Or a Windows, Snapdragon X, of course. Let's make sure we cover the competition here.
Yeah, it's true. So I hear. But this is an original M1 2020 MacBook Air, so the battery is not as healthy as it once was, and it will only get me through about a working day and a half or so before I need to plug it in. But yeah, it's amazing how it holds up.
High efficiency devices are the new thing. Somewhere we had some notes. Slack. There we go.
I could give you mine, but I'm afraid they only focus on things that you're not introducing because they're me. It's very harsh lighting in this room, isn't there? It's like directly above my head. It kind of makes me look like
It's glowing nicely on your cranium.
I should have brought a jaunty hat or something to calm down the glare. Perhaps I ought to chalk it.
or a crown.
Yes.
You could have a little tribble.
Yes. I've never been tempted, but maybe.
I'm sure
maybe.
there's some AI widget that can do an e tribble.
Well, I'm about to turn 50 next month, and I've been
Are you
thinking.
really?
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking I ought to.
Youth.
Yeah, I ought
Yeah,
to
baby.
do something to spruce up my look for a new decade. So maybe I could start wearing a toupee.
Oh,
Yes.
like Michael Fabricant. I think you'd look brilliant.
No, that's not a 2-pay, that's a 3-pay. Or even a 4-pay.
I think he's got different. I think he's got different ones because it kind of changes. Like he'll
Different
have.
occasions,
Oh,
yeah.
look!
Depends
I've
who
just
he's
got my
feeding
haircut.
today. Yes.
Oh, look! It's and
Oh,
then it's
wow,
like,
yes.
oh, I need a haircut.
A series of them you can switch between.
I had a
so you get
haircut a
that
few days ago. How about that?
haircut.
I'm just so rock and
Looking
roll.
very smart, Mr. Honeyball.
I wouldn't go
Yes.
that far. Are we nearly there?
90 seconds more of this, and then more of this nonsense. Then we
All
have
this
to move on to the
bollocks.
other nonsense.
Bollocks.
We are live, so, as you know. So I think they've heard it all before.
Oof.
Who's messaging me? Bah. Friends are trying to make me pay for what I ate last weekend.
Why do we have to start precisely at 1 o'clock?
We don't
Ask
have to
Ninja
start
Nurse.
precisely at 1 o'clock, but
We
I
don't actually Ninja Nurse. It's just kind of we told everybody in case they wanted to leap in.
yes, and I make a mark at 1 o'clock because it really helps with my editing.
Ah,
Because
editing.
we start at an arbitrary time when everyone's ready.
What do you edit on, Darian? What do you use for editing?
Well, I use PreSonus Studio One, which is a fully featured digital audio workstation, and it's really, really massively overpowered for the task. But I use it because I know it inside out,
Yeah.
so it's quickest and easiest for me.
Does it convert the speech to text?
I don't. No, that doesn't. But YouTube can, I believe, or maybe Riverside
Descript
does.
can as well.
I think maybe actually both Riverside and YouTube do it nowadays. It's crazy how things have come on in just a couple of years.
Descript is. I mean, I'm not the most technical, but Descript is just so easy to pick up
We'll
and
get
run with.
Lee Grant onto publishing transcripts, since it seems like the sort of thing he'd be into, and it would be useful to have a searchable archive of all the. Right, 3, 2,
You can-
1, 1 o'clock.
Are we ready then, chappy chaps and chapesses?
So ready.
Ready.
What episode number is this?
Haven't a clue.
Oh, bloody
Don't take a photograph of me like this. Give me a warning.
Do we have
What
any
is it?
idea?
726.
Okay, we're ready to go.
Yes.
Good afternoon and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is Thursday, 23rd of January, episode 726, we believe, but that might be wrong, but we'll see. I'm John Honeyball, contributing editor of PC Pro for all of its existence and beyond that, making me feel very old. Today with me, I have got Darian Graham-Smith.
Hello there. Just to be clear, PC Pro does still exist. It may be that you're contributing editor into the future, but let's not scare people.
I don't want to be presumptuous,
Fair enough.
Someone might actually notice that I haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. And then after 30 years, they might realise this. And we also have Roche Nahuma. Did I
Hello,
get that
everyone.
right?
Yes, you did.
Good God, I don't know how that happened. Finally, after I don't know how many times and how much wine and beer, I've got that right. So, there's the three of us today because Tim is off at, is it BETT or something, the educational trade show
I
thing?
don't
in
know.
London? I think he's doing that, and others are, I don't know, half-terming. I don't know what happens with these school things.
Not for another couple of weeks. I'm
Oh, well, then,
afraid.
there you go, you see. And Darian is still doesn't have his home network yet because fibre hasn't happened in his bit of the road.
Oh,
but
I've got
it's
my
coming
home
soon.
network. I've got my home network. I've got the router and the NAS and the printer and all that stuff. We're a very productive little unit. It's just we're not connected to the outside world at all, and it's much more secure that way.
Are you still on your 4G thing?
Yes, we are in fact connected at a slow rate to be.
Okay, but it'll all be
strictly truthful.
fantastic in a few weeks.
Yeah, it will be half as fast as what we had when we lived in London last year.
Oh, there we go. So he's coming to us from the University of Cambridge Library, I believe. So,
Correct.
Oh, your lighting is bouncing around and the light's going on and off. That's
Yeah,
very
they're probably
exciting.
Just to keep the students awake.
Excellent. Right, let's kick off. So we've got a lot of stuff to cover today and a lot of little topics to cover. And we're going to start with you, Roche, about some stuff to do with TikTok.
Yeah. So I got really interested, just by the way, I got really interested in the TikTok story in the last week. And I thought, I'm going to have a look at that. And then I jumped in head first and then realized it's an absolute... It's an absolute nightmare. It's so multi-layered, it's so complex, and it's now so difficult to find some information. So here we go. Broadly speaking, the TikTok story falls into three buckets. And I'm going to go back to 2019 to make sense of what's happened this week. So in 2019, a think tank published an article that said we'd taken our eye off the ball, or that the West had taken their eye off the ball, and that Chinese social apps posed a significant risk to the West. Okay. Hot on the heels of the publication of that, Trump, who was then the 45th president of the United States, devised an executive order, and it's really important. It's called Securing the Information and Communications Technology and Services Supply Chain. Stick a pin in that because I'll explain why that's important in a moment. And he absolutely bought into that China were a foreign adversary and that they were using vulnerabilities and exploiting those vulnerabilities to their own end. Okay, fine. So this is now 2019. In 2019, he outright accused TikTok of being a tool of the Chinese government. Then in 2020, TikTok filed a suit. Now, you might think they would file a suit for defamation, but they didn't. They filed a suit for administrative impropriety based on the Fifth Amendment. This is kind of important because then Biden gets elected. So this is what they said back in 2020. TikTok filed a suit and they said, you're only saying that because you want to get re-elected. Then Biden gets elected and he doesn't quite rescind the order, but he takes the emergency powers that Trump had utilized, and then he sort of shifts it. Then not much is really done until very recently when this seemed to be going forward, and then TikTok was banned, and it should have been, so the law's enforced, but it wasn't implemented because he was going to be out of office the day before. He left it to the Trump administration, and then Trump delayed it by 75 days. And then I went on to find the Biden executive order, and I got 404 from the White House. So so we all know that TikTok has been accused of being a spy. So that's kind of the politicking angle. But then it's like, well, what's the technical angle? Now, remember I said stick a pin in it about the supply chain. What I did was I went and I looked at, so there's a woman, and she used to be the chief technical officer for the Center for Internet Security, and she wrote the book on supply chain and supply chain risk management, and she has very helpfully put a blog together on this and on the technical issues, the technical elements of this. And I just want to give you her highlights. By the way, her name is Kathleen Moriarty. If you're interested in kind of like a really sensible, holistic, unpolitical view of the whole TikTok situation, go to RSA conference or find her on LinkedIn. I thought I should give her a shout out because it's an excellent piece of work, and I'm not going to go into all of it. Let me just go into a few of the technical elements that she addresses in her blog. So what she does is she explains that because TikTok hosts content for content providers, but also serves it up, they're able to access information from both sides of the connection. And then because of that, they can, and then they can also do geolocating, which makes it problematic for defense forces. And this is a real key concern, because if this information is falling to a foreign adversary, it is quite revealing, especially if your defense forces are using it. And they're able to crunch all of the data that they have from both sides and then extract kind of like behavioral analysis. They can also do biometrics. They think that they will be able to train up their AI to be able to do facial recognition much more accurately. So there's a huge amount of technical elements that, yeah. Oh, and also another thing as well is that because you can filter it depending on the region, China is serving up to their own children stuff related to STEM, so your science, technology, maths and engineering. But then obviously there's a completely different menu of stuff that's being served up to American children. So whatever the long-term ramifications of that are. So then this brings us to today, where Trump, who in 2019 said they're Chinese spies, this week, I mean, this story is changing by the minute. This week has said, no, we don't actually think it is a tool used for spying. Now, other commentators have written that they think that in all likelihood, because this is what was posited very early on, was that if TikTok owners divested some of their shares, then it could continue. So it is looking like that this is a power play, so that TikTok will end up having to sell to the at least 50% to the United States. But one of the
Sorry,
reasons,
just to ask there,
Yeah.
Roche, because there was
Please.
this sort of deadline of Sunday night, wasn't there, where they either had to sell to an American entity or sell a large proportion of it to an American entity, and it wasn't terribly clear who that would be.
Yeah.
It wasn't terribly clear who was going to stump up the money. And it would have been really quite strange for the American government to have leapt into that, for example. But part of this was, I don't know what happened on Android, but Apple pulled the TikTok app for America out of the App Store, saying that they had to do so. And they still haven't put it back, which is kind of interesting as well. But as you say, things changed at the very last minute with Trump. So what's happened there?
yeah, so well, there's two things that happened. So this is the thing. This story. Every thread you pull on, it just unravels a whole lot more. So Trump he like essentially what he did was he paused it. So he hasn't reversed it yet. That will have to come down the line, because essentially this is a piece of law, which is why Apple can't break the law, right? So it's not just Apple, but the other platforms that have made this available, so can't actually do it. So one of the reasons I think that Trump has done this is because, or you've got 7,000 small businesses who are using TikTok either to monetize their content, reach their market, or do both. Then there's also, so what happened was, right, so now they can't access TikTok, but the sale of VPNs has gone through the roof. So essentially what the Americans have done in a way is they have inadvertently, through this executive order, and then people buying VPNs, they've kind of made criminals of a huge portion of their population.
But is it true to say that you can still access TikTok from within America on an American account? I don't think it actually shut down. Or if it shut down temporarily and came back up again on Sunday when it became clear. Is that your understanding of it, Darian, too?
Yes.
Except that except that lots of it is missing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly it's a mess, because as we've said,
Yeah.
the app is no longer on the Apple App Store because they can't put it back in until it's legally clear that they're able to do that. And that legality part hasn't happened yet.
And also the thing is that the alternative platform that's available is a platform called RedNote, and that's also owned by a Chinese company, which then has to feed the information back to the Chinese government if they ask for it. There's no lawful way that they can withhold that because of the internet security law in China. So do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's every tiny little bit of this is actually
It's all a mess.
require. Yeah, it's a huge mess.
Darian, what's your take on this?
Well, it's been very eye-opening, I would say. All of the arguments which were kind of vaunted against TikTok in the first place, Roche mentions they have great insight into lots of information, personal information, relationships between people, data that they can use for mining, they can use for facial recognition, for training AI, and so on. All of those objections could equally be applied to the Western social networks, and by Western, let's be honest, I mean American. That are used every day here in Europe. I think it does raise very, very serious questions. If it's not acceptable to use a social network because the Chinese government might see these things, why is it acceptable for the EU in particular, which is very strong on privacy, to allow the precisely same things to be happening to EU citizens in the US? And of course, as we've seen, the EU is not ignorant of these issues and has been acting to try to regulate and understand and maybe curb a little bit bit of the excesses or the potential excesses. But if it was ever such a big concern as to warrant the enforced shutdown of the entire network, then it does raise some questions. The other thing, I've seen an awful lot of people, Americans, just in the past week online, saying it's, I can't remember exactly what the word is, it's not unconstitutional, but they think that the government shouldn't have the right to close down a platform which they're using to make money. Many, many people say, I'm a creator, I'm an influencer or whatever. TikTok was my main source of income. And I've seen people saying they're going to sue the US government for interfering with their channels of revenue, which I think, honestly, I don't mean to laugh at someone who's been put in that position, but it is kind of laughable that you would build your business on such a, not only just such a kind of transient platform that you don't own, but one which has been known to be in danger of this for several years now.
But I mean, in fairness, Darren, and I totally agree with you on the point you make, there are plenty of people out there who have built their businesses on YouTube. Now, the question has to be asked, why is YouTube better than TikTok, if it is or if it isn't? Certainly the data scraping and analysis and so forth, I'm sure is very similar. The only question is one of intent or provable intent or paranoia intent. And I can understand why people have built their business on TikTok, because it works for them in the same way that it works for people on YouTube. And it's hard to knock that. I mean, I think suing the American government is, as you say, quite laughable. That's not going to go anywhere other than get money into the hands of lawyers. But what do you do?
There is a very big and very relevant to everybody kind of lesson here. In the 21st century, it is very hard to build a big business without relying to some extent on a platform which you do not own and you do not control. But you must take responsibility. You must have a plan B. You must be ready at any moment for political, legal or technical things to just completely pull the rug from under you.
Do we think that there's some parallels here with what the American government did with Kaspersky, which is basically to say this is a product, it has access to all of your data, which, as we know, you look at an antivirus product and it has full access to every file on your computer, because that's the nature of how an antivirus program works. And these antivirus programs don't do only local processing. They will send stuff up to the cloud and so forth. I'm not sitting here saying that Kaspersky is a bad actor. I don't know. I don't have the facts, but America claimed that it was, and therefore threw Kaspersky out of the United States on that basis. And that we've covered this topic over the last year or so.
So I think John, you're right, and actually Moriarty does deal with this in it's a really great blog where she distinguishes between Huawei, Kaspersky, and TikTok, and she's like, look, technically, TikTok sits on the internet, whereas Kaspersky and Huawei, they make tools that are in that's part of the engineering for them, and so while. So her point then is that it's more a question of a free and open internet, right? So the whole TikTok thing is really is a matter of, in her view, free speech. So if you're looking to protect children,
we don't have a free and open internet, and we haven't really since the 90s. TikTok is not free and open. X is not free and open. You might not pay for it, but you are open to whatever editorial or account management is going on. The same is true of Facebook. The same is true of all of these things. And this is a very, very far cry from the internet we had in the 1990s, and the vision that we have, undoubtedly, incredibly naively. I'm not, and I'll certainly put my hand up and say, we all had flowers in our hair back then on this, and look at the car crash that we've ended up with. In terms of actually use and potential abuse, and I'm going to double underline the word potential abuse of data, I don't actually see any particular significant difference between a TikTok and an antivirus product like Kaspersky.
Okay, so I would make the distinction based on the contract. So, for example, with Kaspersky and Huawei, you're paying for something which, like, there will be standard things for kicking the tires. Huawei and Kaspersky aren't giving you their kit for free, whereas TikTok, they are you're as a content creator. Isn't it like Facebook? I'm not on TikTok, by the way, as you'll be able to tell. Yeah, sorry, Darian, jump in.
Oh, no, well, sorry, I was just going to say when you'd finished that it is true that there's a contract, but ultimately Kaspersky is located in Russia, and if the Russian
Didn't
government
they move,
leans
to
on,
be pedantic,
they
didn't they move their headquarters to Switzerland?
they did, yes, that is true, but some element
But,
of
I mean,
Kaspersky
yeah,
is
right,
still,
really.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Arose by any other name, right? So sorry, Darren. So Kaspersky is a Russian company, for all intents and purposes.
Yes, so the contract that you have may not be enforceable in Russia, and even if it is, the government of Russia can very easily lean on the company to stretch or or they don't even have to do it knowingly. I mean, it could be that the Russian government could hack into Kaspersky's servers. I don't mean to imply that Russia is a completely lawless place, but I also don't think we can rely on it to be entirely
Okay, so
fraud.
let's take this, let's wrap this up now because we need to move on to other things. But here's a thought. If you want to set up, never have, but this is as I understand it from friends who have, if you want to set up a business in the UAE, in the Middle East, you have to have basically a sponsor who has a majority share of the company and they have to be a local citizen. Yeah, I believe that to be true. I could be wrong. Are we seeing here a move to this kind of globalist position whereby the United States is going to say, if you want to play in the United States, you need to have a meaningful USA and kind of verifiably USA based and biased ownership structure for at least a significant proportion? And if so, what should the EU's response be to that?
So I was thinking about this because there's so much information. I thought, why don't they just tax them? Like, if you want to extract the money from TikTok and it's just about that, then you could just tax them. If you want to constrain them, then you introduce new laws so that they're constrained. So say, for example, now I do think, I'm just going to use this as an example. It's a poor example, but it's the only one I can think of, is like with the children. Like, so if you want children only to have like an hour of TikTok, then it would be trivial for TikTok to do that on their side so that you can only access it and then it will automatically go off. But then the question is like, well, where are the parents? If that's what you want to do, if that's what you want to achieve, get parents to start to step up. I don't hate the fact that he's done it. I just think that there's other ways of achieving what were they trying to achieve with this ban? And what were the other ways of doing it? Because here's another thing as well, like, why don't the Americans just why don't they just poison the well? Right? So if you've got loads of data, if the whole idea is crunching data to make sense of it, just throw in loads of data that doesn't make any sense. So I'm struggling, I suppose, I thought, I'll scratch the surface and I'll see what this is. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare. It's a total headache.
Well, I think so. We're going to be coming back to this time and time again because this story on TikTok is certainly not over, nor is the whole issue about ownership and structures and so forth. Anything to wrap, Darian, before we move on?
No, just that I think the whole problem with this, a lot of the problems with this arise from the fact that rather than being the outcome, the logical consequence of a principle, of a policy being applied, it was instead a one-off kind of single targeted action without any kind of apparent thought about what larger issues, or how it connected to larger issues and the internet and privacy and sovereignty and all of these things. So yes, it does result in what seems to be a very inconsistent and incoherent situation.
Okay, well, I think we really do need to move on now
Yeah.
because we spent 22 minutes on this, which is quite a sort of a marathon thing. We have a whole bunch of relatively small topics, please, ladies and gentlemen, to get through. I'm not looking in your general direction, Roche, but the eye of time is in your window. So we're going to kick off with me, and we've got a whole bunch of kind of like AI, cloudy kind of things. The first one is that. It appears, and I must confess, I'm still trying to process this to work out if it means anything or it doesn't mean anything, for reasons we'll come back to a bit later on. But it would appear that the relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI is changing, in that OpenAI will no longer exclusively use Microsoft Azure for its cloud capacity. Now, do not panic. This does not mean that Azure won't be running AI and models and so on and so forth. It will do. But what it appears to be is that OpenAI themselves will be able to talk to and use other platforms. I believe they've recently signed a deal with Oracle, for example, for hosting models and engines and so forth. Does this fundamentally change the relationship? I don't know. Only time will really tell. It's clear that Microsoft is still investing insane amounts. I mean, insane in terms of how much is in my wallet, but insane amounts. It's probably very sane for them, but insane amounts of money in Azure and services. I believe the figure is due to be about $80 billion in 2025. So this isn't so much a financial tap as more of a mainstream river, I think, of money being spent on this. But there's going to be some adjustments and tweaks there. I don't think it's ever really come out totally clearly as to the financial relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI, and when Microsoft starts getting paid or so forth. There was something to do with profitability, which OpenAI is laughably a long way away from. But we'll have to wait and see on that front. So that's a Microsoft and OpenAI thing. Roche, an interesting little topic we saw about how companies are going to think about AI agents in the future in their staffing roster.
Yeah, so this is the CIO of Goldman Sachs. I think he's just anthropomorphized AI tools, to be quite honest. He's used, he said things like, hold on, corporate HR offices will have to manage human and machine resources. No, you won't have to manage a machine resource if your function is human resources. The machines will be with the machine people. And then he talks about there may even be AI layoffs. No, that's an upgrade. That already happens. Like, he said there may even be AI layoffs as programs are replaced by more highly capable versions. No, it sounds nice, but none of it makes any sense. So it.
Do you think there might come a point, and it may get sort of implemented in, for example, from Brussels, as being someone who could be quite hot on this, that an AI agent in a company will be treated as if it was an employee? No, it's not going to happen. We're not going to see employment law leveraged onto AI objects.
No, absolutely no way.
Okay, what about liability?
Will rest with the human. So there's a great line, and I can't remember the case.
But how long? I know we've talked about this before, but
Yeah.
and the point is that the AI can't be held liable at the moment, which is fine, but that's really not going to last a long way. And the parallel I give you here is
it will, because whoever's brought the AI tool into the company. So say, for example, if an AI tool makes a catastrophic mistake, then what they'll look to is the decision-making process that led to that tool being brought into the company.
Okay.
And then to what degree there was
but self-driving cars. The manufacturers have already conceded that the insuring liability will be with the manufacturer and not with the owner of the vehicle. Now, which you could, I know this is a different space, but does this mean that in the future you could see a world where the AI agent's supplier, training data company, etc., will be liable to the extent that the AI agent itself becomes a liable thing under employment law? This is kind of where my head was
No,
going.
I know, and I like the idea of it if we were over a beer, but there's no way, because the AI would have
Beer
to be
needed.
Yeah.
Okay, Darian, we need to do we need to do another pub thing in London. Now, I take your
I'm
point,
not
Rose.
there now, I'm
Yeah.
afraid. Can't help.
Okay, fine. You're no fun.
Sorry.
So, Roche, let's park this and we'll come back to it. But you can see where my
So,
thinking was
but
going there.
can we just take the car thing? Because interestingly, the AI is in the car,
Yep.
but it's the company. The company is a legal entity and is recognized as a person in law, right? And so it's capable of signing contracts and making decisions and stuff like that. But actually, you can lift the veil so that you can see the people who are making the decisions behind it. But that's the whole purpose of a limited liability company, is to separate the humans from the pain if everything goes badly wrong. However, if there's negligence involved or recklessness or something of that nature, they'll say, listen, you can't use that as your shield. They
Yes.
literally call it
But as an
piercing.
employer, you could go after an employee that had been reckless.
No, because ultimately the employer is the person. So even with employees who've been reckless, sometimes the employer can be held liable. It's called vicarious
to the
liability.
outside world. But I mean, anyway, we'll come
Yeah.
back to this, but
Yeah.
because this
I'm
is
not
an
buying it,
emerging
to be
topic.
honest.
She
I think the
doesn't
guy
buy
might
it.
have been on loopy juice.
And
yeah,
the
when he
best thing
said
she
it.
said was loopy juice and beer. So I think we'll leave it at that point. Okay, next one up, Darian. Salesforce. What is he saying?
This is very similar to what you were just talking about, actually. This flows on very organically. This is Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, speaking in Davos just yesterday. He suggested that, I think the precise line was, today's CEOs will be the last to have all human workforces, which does sort of imply that the AIs are going to be counted as workers alongside the humans. And when he talks about it, it sort of makes sense in that he's saying about managing humans and agents, AI agents, together, in the sense of when you're working out your workflows and your processes, some things will be done by people and other things will be done by computers or by computer programs. And I do see that, I wouldn't, not to reopen that can of worms we've just forced shut, but there are some things that you cannot hold an AI liable for, you can't expect of them, but other things you can treat them sort of like what's the word I want, you can have a commodity being which does a job, and it might be a human or it might be an agent, an AI agent. Again, I keep saying he's using the word agent to mean exclusively AI agent, and I have to keep on clarifying that because otherwise it's very ambiguous. But although it sounds potentially quite forward-looking and sensible, I was a little bit concerned when he went on to say that because he's deployed so much AI in his own company, he's finding that support staff, humans, don't have as much to do as they used to, and he's trying to redeploy them into sales positions, and that sounds to me like an awful future. If if you're taken on because of your expertise and interest in one area, and then an AI takes your job, and you get shunted into something which I've quite enjoyed working in IT support in my time. I would hate to be shoved into sales. I'm not quite as upbeat about it as Benioff is.
Okay, but again, it plays back to what we were just talking about. This discussion will roll on and on and on. This interesting report has come out of Microsoft. They have been what they call red teaming internal AI engines and solutions on platforms. Over 100 of them. Who knew Microsoft had 100 of them? But they do. It's not actually entirely clear whether all 100 of them are shipping and public facing, but they have been working on this, and a whole bunch of them, 26 authors on this paper, which is available through Cornell University's archive site. And basically, you go through the list of names. I must confess, I didn't recognize most of them. But of course, you land on the last one, which is Mark Russinovich, who is God of Microsoft, God of Azure, God of OS kernels, and basically, up there with the gods of Microsoft. And what he doesn't know about this is probably not worth knowing. And he's been involved in this. And they've basically been trying to work out whether or not AI systems are more secure, less secure, or differently secure to ordinary code and platforms. And basically, they've come to the conclusion that, oh dear, like any complicated new system, it's difficult, and there is a whole bunch of new attack vectors and new problem areas that now have to be considered in the context of an AI hosted or AI fed system, and you cannot just assume that all the old rules apply to an AI-based system, because there can be an awful lot of non-linearity and different ways of feeding data in and dealing with what comes out of it. And they came up with 8 major principles. I just reading off a couple of them. Responsible AI harms are pervasive but difficult to measure, which basically means it's very hard to know when something has gone wrong, because you have this effectively you have this additional layer of abstraction over your underlying data and processes and so forth. And so now knowing whether what it's done is the right thing is very hard to measure. LLMs amplify existing security risks and introduce new ones, which I think is something we should all be printing out in 100-point Arial and pasting on the wall. And the work of securing AI systems will never be complete. Well, I think we'd all agree with that. All security is never complete. The problem here is it's going to be difficult in many cases to know what's going on here and how to work out how AI-based systems are a security risk, a data risk, a process risk, and so forth. There's a link coming in there. Cole Tregaskis, live on our chat, has just asked for that, and there's a news report about it too. So I thought that was interesting, and it's good. It shows that Microsoft is taking this very seriously and is applying, serious intellectual horsepower to this, which is exactly what you would expect. They're betting the entire farm and next door's farm and the village down the road on this, and they can't get it wrong. There will undoubtedly be speed bumps in the way. That's how things work. But it's good to see that they're trying to build processes and pushing out papers and documentation on this. Finally, I'm getting differing stories on this as to whether it's 100 billion or 500 billion. But hey, you can't expect everything to be clear from Trump. He has announced a venture fund to fund artificial intelligence infrastructure, and it's backed by OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle. And there's an Abu Dhabi-based firm called MGX who's also funding this. So it isn't really clear whether it's American government or whether it is this Emirati investment vehicle plus those 3 big companies. It has turned into a little bit of a spitting competition on X about this, because it would appear that Elon Musk is out of this little space at the moment, which is odd given how close he is to Trump. But he says that they don't have the money to do this. Now, Satya Nadella at Microsoft has been interviewed in the last 24 hours, and he's basically said, we're spending 80 billion. We've got the money. We're all good. So there's a large sort of numbers being thrown up in the air, and it's going to be very interesting to see what's going on there. Certainly, there's an awful lot of building going on in that space, and I believe actually, as Cole has reminded me, Cole Tregaskis on our Discord chat, they're already building a data center in Texas. So how much of this is new, how much of this is announcement, how much of this is wrapping paper around something already happening, don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I was actually quite amused by a tweet from Sam Altman this morning. Now, if you go back through Sam Altman, who's the head of OpenAI, and look through his Twitter history, you will find all sorts of very rude things about Mr. Trump. He did not like Mr. Trump at all. I mean, I can't imagine why. Mr. Trump seems very cuddly. But he said a whole bunch of things saying, we've got to do whatever we can to keep him out of power and so on and so forth. But this morning he tweeted, and please, he was there, I believe he was there at the inauguration, along with all the other big fish in the tech world. There was Tim from Apple, there was Facebook, etc., Satya from Microsoft. He tweeted this morning, watching POTUS, President of the United States, more carefully recently has really changed my perspective on him. I wish I had done more of my own thinking and definitely fell in the NPC trap. I don't know what an NPC is.
Non-player character.
There we go. I'm not going to agree with him on everything, but I think he'll be incredible for the country in many ways! ! What can you say? I think that's the sound of a cash register ringing for hoping for some incoming fund.
I am going to controversially agree with Sam Altman. When Trump was elected the first time, I nearly lost my mind. And then Biden got in. But this time, A, I'm not surprised. And B, it's like, who else would they have voted for? Like, there was no realistic contender that could have beaten him. And
let's not dive down into the American political psyche thing.
No, but
let's just put a pause on this because we just got to see how this falls out.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm not as opposed to look, there's, I wish the guy was writing me a check. He's not writing me a check, but I'm like, let's see what he does, because
we don't have any choice now, do we?
Yeah.
He's what America has voted for, and
Yeah, 100%.
Whether we like him or not, we have to respect that decision.
It was a fair election, and
So there we go. Actually, I am actually mildly in agreement here with, who was it here? Oh yeah, Michael Deere saying, can they change the name Stargate, which is the name of this program? He says Stargate is a ring travel to other worlds.
Yeah.
It was a damn good film, and despite the naysayers, I actually thought it was a damn good series as well.
Oh yeah, well, MacGyver in it. It was good.
But it was good. But why calling it Stargate, I don't know. But there we go. So I think we've done enough on this topic for this week. But the next one's with me. The UK government, bless their souls, aren't they so lovely? And aren't they so good at IT? They have decided that we should be able to have digital driving licenses. What this means is that we don't have to carry around the driving license card with us, but we'll have some sort of virtual license thing. I don't have a problem with that, although I can see, the Hertz rental station in Armpit, Idaho, having a problem when you whip your phone out and say, here is my driver's license, and they want to photocopy it, which seems to be what they like to do still. And so I think carrying around a physical license is going to be important. And for those of us of a certain age, and for people like me who are insulin injecting and therefore DVLA notifiable, so we have to have our licenses renewed every 3 years rather than the usual, whatever it is, 10 years you get. It's going to be easier, although I must confess because it should just be a digital upload, blah, 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 easy. Although I must confess my last renewal a couple of years ago was 6 days and it came in the post. I can't knock that at all. But they're going to do this, and it's going to be through a new app. Now, my only question here is, that's going to cost a lot of money. You know that the usual suspects in the consulting and government IT delivery platform are lining up their wheelbarrows at this point and telling the Treasury to fill it with cash. And why can't they just give me the option to stick this digital ID for my driving license which could still look like the Euro-style driving license, stick that into my Apple Wallet. My Apple Wallet works brilliantly, and there's a Google equivalent. I'm not championing Apple on this. I'm championing modern IT. If it's good enough for me to board a plane at Heathrow, or to do any of the other things that I do with my Apple Wallet, including holding credit cards and payment stuff like that, why can't a UK driver's license go into that platform rather than having to use their own app? Darian.
Am I right in saying that stuff you put in your wallet is sort of flat, non-static information? Your Apple Wallet.
Yes, it is. But
Yeah,
you
well,
can renew the card.
That's probably it. Though this is probably the first step, or a step on, because they've already moved like a lot of things, like your tax affairs and so on. Those were already online, and I dare say this is
They're online, but they're on Gov UK website. They're not within an app.
Yes, but lots of things have moved online, and more things can move online. And I would be entirely I'd be very happy to believe that rather than just throwing more stuff out there in a fragmentary way, this could be part of a bigger strategy, or at least could lay foundations which a bigger strategy could be built on in future to tie things together more neatly.
Well, wouldn't it be nice if they said we're doing this because we have a bigger strategy and this is what we want to do? Because at the moment, I think we're going to pay a lot of taxpayers' money on something that will be functionally not as good as an Apple Wallet. Actually, I must point out that Ian Knox says Apple Wallet is not just static information. I must confess, I've only ever seen it static for things like bank cards, boarding passes and stuff like that, but maybe there are use cases where this can be dynamic. Gavin Hall also points out something that I ranted about in my column, which is that all the government websites seem to have their own login. If you just deal with anything to do with cars, like London congestion charge, Dartford crossing, vehicle excise duty, Bristol City Council, they're all on Gov UK, but they're all different systems and they're not joined up. And why the hell can't I have one payment system tied to my vehicle registration? So how are you going to make this work? Oh, Glasgow as well, apparently, says Michael. Roche, you're waving your hand.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned the cars, because we already have it. We have ANPR, the automatic number plate recognition, and then that will pull up whether or not you've got your insurance, and it'll put up whether it's taxed. I think it pulls up and a whole load of criminal information about you. Why isn't it just tied into, if it's this part, these are the people who are insured on that car, and they have their driver's license are valid until these dates.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be a downer. Things like HMRC online works well, and my accounts go through now, and that kind of works. But I just want to see more joined upness. But we'll always like to see that. Anyway, it's 45 minutes in, and we are still not done. Darian, we've got a couple of little small bits here. 3D printers?
Yes.
Little nibby things.
A bit of a bill has been presented before the New York State Assembly proposing to make it illegal to sell a 3D printer to anyone without a background check. People who are currently unable to buy a gun will also be barred from buying 3D printers. The reason is pretty obvious. I believe Luigi Mangione used a 3D printed gun to assassinate the CEO of United Healthcare last month, and there are many other less high-profile crimes being committed with 3D printed weaponry. Some people are saying that it might be constitutionally tricky. Attorney Greg Rinke, who's opposing the proposal, raises the valid philosophical point. You have to decide at what point something you're printing is part of a firearm, and where you cross that threshold. Although I suppose, actually, if you just blanket ban the sales of 3D printers to anyone who doesn't pass the test, then maybe that's academic.
And in more 3D printing news, there's quite a sort of what should we say, argument going on over Bamboo Labs and their licensing. Now, I'm not a 3D printer, but I know many friends of us are, including Jeff on the channel, and I believe that Bamboo is like one of the preferred best type of products out there. They're very good, very reliable, way better than the stuff I played around with a decade ago. But there has been some kerfuffle over firmware updating and whether you can print if you don't have the new firmware update and so forth. And it would appear to not help that they appear to be changing their website and terms of conditions on the fly, but not actually keeping up to date with the version numbers and so forth. And then I believe it has been claimed, I saw last night, that they've told the various Wayback Machine type websites not to keep a history of their website, which kind of is inflaming the issue, no smoke without fire. So I'm not particularly bothered about this. I think there is a significant issue here, especially when you have a significant security issue when you have got services that can bolt into a platform like this. And I'm just looking here at Bamboo's wiki page, and they claim this is abnormal access. This is basically patterns for unofficial clients trying to request access into the API and platform. And they say that, on the January the 8th, they had 10 million abnormal requests in 15 minutes. And at some point you have to be pragmatic and say, that is quite a denial of service attack against a platform, and it has to do whatever it can do to protect. But this one will roll and roll, I am sure. Now we have some nibs, quick nibs, because we are running out of time. Darian, Microsoft.
Yes, so this sounds like it's really of no interest at all. Microsoft is going to make a change next month where when you log into your Microsoft account online, the box that says keep me signed in won't be there anymore. It will keep you signed in by default. I'm not sure what the rationale is for this. I guess it's just to streamline things for people, but there's a lot of discussion of how we need to be very aware of the fact that if you're using someone else's computer and you sign in, you will not be logged out after a period of inactivity by default. I don't know if that's forever or just it will be a much longer window. Unfortunately, for those of us who have about 6 different Microsoft accounts on different services, which I assume is pretty much everyone listening to the PC Pro podcast, you'll still have to go through the tedium of signing out and switching users. But nevertheless, just be aware.
And Roche, Intel.
Highly controversial
But
story.
quick.
Yeah, I know. I'll make it quick. So, semi-accurate was read an email about a company that was looking to buy Intel outright. The email was sent to a very tight circle, according to the source. Whoever released that email will have signed a confidentiality agreement, has breached that confidentiality agreement, and may be doing a thing called a pump and dump. However, that story stacks up. This should not be a story, and I think Semi-Accurate ought not to have published it.
There we go. And finally, Cyril, for those of us of a certain age who remember that, Adobe, Darian.
Yes, a lot of people have been grumbling about, Adobe like filling its applications with AI features that nobody asked for. I don't have a lot of sympathy with that, but in particular, I have to say the newest AI feature, which is in Adobe Premiere Pro, sounds great to me. For the first time, once you've imported all your dozens of clips, you can tell them apart by just typing in a description of which one you want, and Premiere Pro will say, oh yes, it's that one. So if you want the one where the camera pans across the seafront, just type that in. It'll go, there you go, which I think is wonderful because it's certainly a lot easier than just looking at trying to work out which one is which from cryptic file names or from the very opening frame of what could be a lengthy piece of footage.
I have to say, this is something where I wholeheartedly applaud use of CPU power to work this kind of stuff out. I was actually just going through my photo library on Apple Photos on my phone, and it's just like 200, 300 gig of photo storage. I'm trying to sort of weed out some of the not quite so interesting stuff. And it does a reasonable stab at looking for faces, and it can geolocate based upon where the phone thinks the photograph was taken and so forth. But to go a whole lot deeper there, find me the T-bone steak, that will be really quite useful. And the T-bone steak I had in Las Vegas, those kinds of queries. But it's very CPU CPU consumptive, but this kind of access to your stuff, I think, is very powerful and very useful indeed. Are you going to use that, Roche?
Nope.
Well, there we go. That's just so on point there, Roche. And before we move on to hot hardware, I'm just going to give a quick little shout out here to Ian Clark on our Discord channel. He says that his son has just come home from school, looked over his shoulder, and asked if you could have a hello from his friends. So hello on the podcast as well. I don't know Ian Clark's son's name, otherwise I would shout that out as well. But there you go.
Hey,
Hello. Oh, Sten. That's a nice name. I haven't heard the name Sten in a long time. So there we go. To Sten Clark, welcome from all of us in this madhouse. Now, it is time for hot hardware. And I had a little bit of a battle with Roche over whose turn it was to do hot hardware. And I took the executive decision that I would win because I'm hosting. So that's fine. So this week I have a new product for you. I've got the first one just before Christmas, and I like it so much. I've now got 3 of these things. And because it's really good. Now, Anker is a company that we all know. They make very good battery packs and chargers and so forth. They're part of another company, aren't they, Darian? What else is Anker?
Let me just look that up while you're talking.
They make security cameras under another brand name, or they acquired, or something like that. Anyway, I'm digressing. If you can find it, that will be a good little background. I should have done this. Eufy, says Skyloop. I think it's part of the Eufy company. There we go. Anyway, Anker make good, solid, interesting chargers. Is this? Here we go. Here's another Anker USB high power USB charger I have on my desk. Anyway, this is a desktop charger. The good thing about this is that unlike a wall wart charger, which is very easy to wander, shall we say. They're very pick-upable by other people, and then you go to find it and it's not there anymore. A desktop charger with a mains cable is much more likely to stay in place. Now, what's nice about this charger? It is 250 watts power output. Now, it's not doing 250 watts power output out of one port. Let's not get overexcited. You're not going to make toast with it. But it does have 4 USB ports on the front, 2 USB-A ports on the side. On the front, port 1 will give you 140 watts. Ports 2, 3, and 4 will give you 100 watts. Now, the maximum output is 250 watts. You can't get 3 times 100 watts and 140 watts all at the same time. But what's really nice about this piece of kit is you can control very easily through the user interface and through a very nice stepped rotary controller on the side, you can control how much power goes out of each port. Now, with 140 watts, that's more than enough to power even the most consumptive laptop, to charge up a big laptop. And then you've still got maybe 100 watts if you want to charge up a second laptop. That's your 240, 250 watts. Or you can say, I'm going to charge my big laptop and a phone and a watch and some batteries, for example, or a battery pack. It can do all of that. But it's more than that, because it's cleverer than that. There is an app. We like an app. And the app is really good because it gives you all the sort of data monitoring about what's going on each port, how much power is being taken and so forth. That's very good. And there's more than that, because you can decide that a port will come live or go off at certain times. So you can decide that you want a battery pack charging area to be switched on at 2 o'clock in the morning and come off at 5 o'clock in the morning. So you've got some control. I don't particularly like leaving these sort of strips of rechargeable AA batteries plugged in all the time, because you think, well, are they going to blow up? Are they going to get hot? Are they going to be a problem? I really like it. The app's good. There's a new firmware for it. It's all fine and it works. And it's a bit expensive, I admit, it's 160 odd quid, but it's a really good thing. I leave it to you to decide whether you like it or not. Darian, any questions?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm very impressed you managed to find that much to say about a power supply. I don't think I can come up with anything, any more curiosity that you haven't already addressed.
Well, that's all very lovely then. Roche?
Yeah, I mean, it charges stuff. Cool.
Oh, that's all right then.
No,
That's
but
so very
like
good.
like I totally would get it if it was portable, right? Because and you could like a little battery pack that you could take away on a weekend, or if you were camping, or if you were going out for the day. But you can plug stuff into a wall. Yeah.
There we go. Darian, I think we need a vote on this. Can we have a vote?
Oh, what do you mean, a poll on...
A poll thing, please.
Yes, let me just
Do we
sort
think
that
it's
out.
hot or not? Given its power output and its capabilities and so forth, what do we think?
Okay, there you go. The poll is posted on Discord, so our live listeners can give their verdict.
Yes,
Now my
it will
printer.
connect, Ian, it will connect on Wi-Fi to your network, so the app can talk to you. I mean, I can look at any of my devices from anywhere, because it will actually port through the cloud, or it can be a Bluetooth connection. Too expensive, people are saying. Well, maybe so.
How expensive is it?
160 quid. Well, okay. How is our poll going? Oh dear, not very well. Are we there? Okay, let's go for this. Darian, do you think it's hot or not?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of USB chargers already, and there are things I dislike about almost all of them. One is that they very rarely have enough power to charge the things that I really want charged. They are, as you say, wall warts, which means that it's a pain to get down to them to plug things in, and also quite often they get in the way of the surrounding furniture. And they don't have enough connectors in the first place, so I have to have multiple ones plugged into multiple sockets, and it's all very inefficient. This addresses all of those issues, and also adds, as you mentioned, the benefit of the app, the scheduling, and so on. So I really love it, but I don't know if I can justify 160 quid. It's tough because honestly, if they did a version of this that had just 60 watts, I would, and were half the price, I'd probably leap at it because that's all I need. But they've engineered it so much, they've made it so premium and so capable that I fear they've priced themselves out of my market. That said, as we say, this is not really, is it good value? Is it hot? And quite apart from any silly jokes about 140 watts, it's got me more excited than I ever expected to be about a USB power supply. So I'm going to say yes, hot.
Okay, Roche, do you think it's hot or not?
No, I don't think it's hot. I think it's overkill for what it needs to do.
I like overkill. Overkill is good. Okay, well, thank you for that. So it's a mix from there. I'm going to say it's hot because I've bought 3 of them, because I think they're really useful, and I can just have it on my desk here. I can see what's going on. I can plug anything into it and charge it up at full speed, and to me that's a good thing. Unfortunately, our lovely Discord friends have given it 13 hot and 22 not hot. So I think from there it's a vote that it's not hot. So, well, oh well, dear me, never mind.
It's all right. You will buy enough of them to make up for the lack of sales to the Discord crew.
Well, there we go. So, on that note, I've singularly failed, but never mind. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye,
Goodbye.
from him, yes.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, all right. I have to get back to East Cambridge, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks all.
Take care. See you, Darian.
Bye for now.